Last year I ranked every live-action comic book movie not based on a mainline Marvel DC property, only English language comics, and not counting any comic strips. Take that same criteria, and that's what I'm doing for animated films today. This does sadly mean no Asterix, no Tintin, no Corto Maltese, but those will get their day in the limelight sometime in the future, don't worry. At least there's also no Smurfs. Kind of speeding through this intro because frankly, I don't think I need to dwell on the criteria or anything, right? If you watch that one, you know what I'm talking about, you know? No comic strips because there'd be way too many additional movies to throw on this. No manga or anything, even though those objectively are comics, and if you disagree, you're wrong. Nothing like that. It's just English language, non-Marvel DC comic book / graphic novels. That's it. No need to dwell. All the films that fit the criteria are listed in the description, so if you're curious and you want to know what's coming up and be like, oh, I know that movie, because obviously there's going to be some that you might know, you might not know. They're there. Except, spoiler alert, I could not include Chickenhare 2, the second of the Chickenhare films. Obviously that's what the 2 means, because I just couldn't find anywhere. There's nowhere I could find to watch it. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to watch a film on some shady website in Spanish with no subtitles and tell you how good it is. Just pretend like it doesn't exist. Let's get going.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer.
Pixies has been one of the most utterly and thoroughly miserable experiences for any of these rankings. I hate absolutely everything about this movie without fail. Even if we casually ignore the fuck ugly animation that looks worse than what would happen if I wrapped my dick in tinfoil, jammed it in an active toaster, jumped into the bathtub, and used the violent convulsions of my thrashing body to slam a laptop running blender into the side of a wall for an hour, this movie still fucking sucks! It's fucking horrible! Look, okay, the premise of this movie is that a guy, without knowing, accidentally causes some shit to fall onto some pixies, and it hilariously obliterates one of the princes. Thus, the king decides that the right thing to do is send his remaining son out with some allies to ensure that for the rest of everyone's life, that man is tormented forever. Just, the guy who did it by accident, torment him forever. Wow, what a great idea. So where could this movie fail? Let's start with one of the main aspects, the comedy. It's atrocious. Any physical comedy lacks less comedic timing than the following joke. Knock knock, who's there, fuck fuck who. And the comedy based on the character banter? Fuck you. It's really, really bad. The characters speak in the most stilted and unnatural of ways, with voice acting about as good as a 2010s YouTube skit created by a pair of 7-year-olds. Everyone is fucking atrocious and I hate them. This has nothing to help how I absolutely hate the characters. Joe is an insufferable nothing burger of a character. He has 2 personality traits. Loves this woman and wants to work as a mechanic and not just as a register guy. The latter of which is resolved pretty quickly, and the former of which is hard carried straight to the sulfur pits by chemistry so bad you couldn't make water out of ice using a flamethrower. The pixies are all annoying. The 2 friends are horrendous and uninteresting and annoying to experience. The main character, Sam, is a frustrating guy who just sucks. He's super into tormenting this dude until he's not, and then suddenly he gives a shit about his brother's wishes despite barely having any time to reflect on his brother's death. He's the first to help Joe because I guess he needed to be. The characters also don't see the pixies when an army of them are confronting Joe, but somehow they're not invisible or anything, because Samuel directly fucking states they're not in a scene that takes place fucking after this, so I don't know how the pixies function. Sam here just kind of destroys any ability to understand what's going on. Why anything, I guess? The movie's pacing is entirely there, like it gets the job done, but having expected pacing doesn't help when every scene sucks. Why make slapstick a focal point of the comedy when your animation team consists of 3 bootleg Transformers and an unfinished LEGO Pirates of the Caribbean set? I cannot stress how miserable this movie made me. Nobody is likable. They resolved the whole conflict with just, let's let bygones be bygones, and then bro helps out once and suddenly everybody is fucking kissing and shit and a romance was had. Except you could fit an ICBM between their lips, they're so not kissing. No contact was made here. I despise this movie, and thanks to this ranking, I think Arcana Studios might be my new least favorite animation studio that isn't Brinquedo or Sparkplug. Holy shit!
Yeah, I don't get this either. Pretty sure I died.
The Adventures of the Amazing Living Corpse is a bastardization of the medium of animation. It features animation on par with the Action Man films and a script only half as competent. This movie devolves from the first frame into just the titular character running around and saying shit that means nothing and is nothing. The movie has no through line, nothing of value to say, it doesn't even have anything really to entertain you with, featuring some of the worst action scenes and dialogue I have ever experienced. There is not a singular, pleasurable, ocular, or auditory sensation to be found, except from the few times it genuinely becomes so fucking bad that it kind of becomes funny. I cannot possibly describe the misery of this movie, it genuinely does nothing right. I fucking can't believe this movie exists, but at least at times, it's fucking funny. But it is also just confusing, like characters will just say shit and none of it will matter. I barely know what's going on and I don't ever care to check out. By the time I was done, I was begging for mercy, and halfway through, I was begging for mercy. This is a genuinely nothing experience. Except, I guess if I was watching it with other people, it might be fun to riff on, so it does have that in the bag, that's in the back pocket, it's fun to riff on. And like, you know, for that much, I guess it wouldn't be too bad.
They liked big butts.
And could not lie.
You others can't deny when a girl walks in with a itty bitty waist.
I'm going to keep this segment for the Haunted World of El Superbeasto short because most of this movie is just tits flopping about and I can't show that. The Haunted World of El Superbeasto is very crass and full of black comedy, which sometimes works, and I did find a few jokes funny, especially when it involves the gorilla or the zombies that have a small musical number anytime they appear. But the movie really over-relies on the joke being sex, horniness, and tits. The gore naturally isn't as impressive as most Rob Zombie works due to, you know, being animated in a very basic way. The animation can be good and also sometimes sucks, and our protagonist is really annoying and bad. Every character is defined by their horniness level, and that gets really tired. It lacks variety in the comedy, so even as someone who found, like, the stripper scene where she physically abuses Super Beasto by inflating her tits like balloons to bash him over the head fairly amusing, by the half-hour mark, you've seen all the jokes, you've seen all the permutations of the joke is boobs. There's nothing here you can get more entertainment value from. There's nothing here that you can't get and better from any other Rob Zombie film. If you like his style of really crass, dirty comedy and gore, this is just not the place to get it. There are so many better movies for that. Next.
Oh no, the animation budget ran out.
Red Sonja Queen of Plagues is surprisingly enough a motion comic. Now I have no issue with motion comics in general. I think that the Watchmen one is pretty alright, but this ended up being a real problem for the movie because I just don't find motion comics to be a style that works for a full film. As several 22-minute long episodes, Queen of Plagues might be fine, but as a single full-length movie you're expected to watch in one sitting, it is awkward and stilted. The story also doesn't work. Motion comics need atmosphere and fit with slower, more thoughtful scenes and stories. Red Sonja is a large-scale war story involving intense action scenes of gore and death. Brutality is a staple of this kind of tortured sword and sorcery protagonist, but it just doesn't hit when it all looks like this. The movements are all stilted, awkward, stiff and strange. Battles and action scenes feel weird to look at, and the inconsistent art of the original comic doesn't help, especially in this animated form. There's no punch or impact to the kills. It cuts between shots and now someone's dead. There is no flow in the motion, no oomph to it, because this style of animation just does not work for it. It's so entirely beholden to the original art that it's too limited. The style also stops the voice acting from hitting like it should. The characters look different to how they sound, making everything feel disjointed and disconnected. And the Pulp Fiction type inner monologues are truly ridiculous when all of it is made audible to the viewer. Scenes that work as a still image because you can interpret the motion and details yourself no longer work because they need to be adapted instead of moved around in this way. So there's a dissonance between what you see and what you're supposed to see. And this is a problem with almost every single scene in the film. The story might not be awful, the voice acting can be very good, but the way they conveyed make the story lack impact and emotion with these entirely static faces. When they're moving but not changing, it makes you feel as if the characters aren't real and alive, when the comic probably was fine because none of it moves. You can accept a static face when it's just images. The voices stick out amongst the minimalist audio style of a motion comic, and as a result they can sometimes feel amateurish. It feels like an amateurish if charming fan project. This is an issue with all motion comics and comic dubs, but I almost never take issue with it because usually they are short and they are made with passion. When they are shorter projects, I don't mind the kind of out of place voices because there's an atmosphere that makes it work. But over an hour plus long experience, that atmosphere dies quickly. I didn't care about the characters or the twists or the reveals of the events. I just think the overall style failed to convey the necessary impact and emotions to me. It could have been much better if it was actually adapted.
It's cold outside.
Howard Lovecraft and the Frozen Bullshit is a really strange movie. It has plenty of flaws I can forgive, such as the 1500s era 3D animation quality and the sound design put together by a half-eaten microwave. What I cannot forgive as much is just how fucked it is. As a movie, it just gets progressively worse as time goes on. We start with a subpar opening scene. Yes, I did say it gets worse as time goes on, which takes place in Arkham Sanitarium. This sets up our film with the Necronomicon and Howard himself going to the evil poo-poo pee-pee realm. We get a subpar-ish scene with squid people and Howard's new friend Spot. We then go on to learn that Cthulhu is gone and is mysteriously somewhere else. I sure wonder where Cthulhu could be. Howard goes on to meet Shoggoth or whatever, who is voiced somehow by Ron Perlman. He goes on to drop the reveal that Spot is actually Cthulhu. Whoa! And he does so with significantly less pomp and impact than I just gave. In fact, let me go back and try again. I'm going to explain the plot twist of this movie in the same way the movie does. Spot is Cthulhu, by the way. Thankfully, he also realizes his mistake and then explains the plot twist immediately after a brief cutaway to Cthulhu. He then vors Cthulhu, instantly gets one-shot by Howard with no resistance. This lady turns out to be a twist villain so blatantly obviously evil that I didn't realize that her being a villain was actually supposed to be a twist. Howard then goes on to start shooting laser beams and then the movie ends. What a fucking shit show. Not helped at all by how the pacing goes from slow to brisk to slow to really slow to suddenly it's the last act, we've got to get this over and done with. Again, I can forgive having animation quality on par with the 4th Crusade castle banner and models about as appealing to look at as a rhinoceros's turd hole. That's just the low budget showing. But good god, could they not have had a good protagonist maybe? Maybe a likable character would have been nice? I didn't even mention there's a single scene that properly establishes Cthulhu as Howard's friend, which comes out of nowhere, lasts too long, and goes too slow. Like, it takes forever for a single snowball to be felt. The point of a montage is to show a lot of stuff quickly, not a little stuff slowly. As I even mentioned, that it does this weird thing with the dialogue, where the dialogue is always either one of line, pause, line, or line with no gap whatsoever. There's never any natural flow to the dialogue. There's either an audible pause between characters, or the same character interrupting themselves mid-sentence. I really did not like this movie. I think at every turn it does something stupid, and its ending is really unsatisfying as they just job both the main villains, and the threat of losing his sanity and turning evil Cthulhu isn't felt. As ironic as it sounds now that I think about what I just said. Because he's just gyrating there in the background. Bad movie. Howard Lovecraft may just be the worst animated trilogy I've ever seen. Hell, screw animated, I struggle to think of a worse trilogy overall I've actually sat through. These movies are aggressively nothing, and Howard Lovecraft and the Kingdom of Madness just makes me feel bad. It is exclusively a victim of its own budget. Story-wise, I think it's fine. Howard gets brought on a journey by Randolph Carter to go save the world, only to be betrayed as it turns out. Randolph is an evil, jaded, alternate universe version of Howard himself as an adult. Okay, Emiya. Cthulhu is awakened, and everyone tries to fight off the incursion of the Eldritch until Howard is able to get through to his friend through the bullshit and bring him back. Really, the main issue with this film is that it's far too big a scope for these production values. This is maybe the only Howard Lovecraft film where I don't have it in me to even slightly forgive this, as it is solely the bad animation that kills this story. The tension, the action, the cosmic horror, the scale, the intensity, these things are all riding on the animation to carry it through visual storytelling. Unfortunately, it looks like this. Cthulhu destroying worlds looks more like he's mouth fighting everywhere. The incursion of chaos is a barely interesting nothing burger reminiscent of any given TV budget urban teen fantasy witch fight. It's truly the least anything that has been put to screen. I also feel like the relationship between Spot and Howard wasn't really earned. In this film, all we get to see is Spot supposedly being close enough to risk his life to save Howard, but the previous film is not really that notable, and the film before that has one montage that ends in the friendship they'll carry for the rest of the movies. That's the issue. The first movie has a montage, and that's it, and the second movie barely has their friendship there. Add to that other characters like Howard's father and teacher being significantly less interesting in this film, and the whole thing relying on a big twist reveal that just doesn't work out, because he's so obviously voiced by the second movie's character King Abdul, it's just Jeffrey Combs again. So it becomes really weird when they have the exact same voice, but they're completely different characters. So yes, you're not going to immediately think, oh, that's just older Howard, but you are going to be sitting there going, you mean that's not just King Abdul? I'm a bit upset, because with better animation, this actually could have been pretty epic as a climax, and it wouldn't manage to carry a somewhat mediocre story with good visuals. But no, it's just really not worth watching. It's something of a letdown.
Help! I'm a fish.
Howard, Lovecraft, and the Undersea Kingdom is the second film and only slightly better than the other two, if only by being just a lot more standard. That is to say, it holds a fairly normal storyline of kid trying to save his mother. Cthulhu is sadly not as present as he was in the first movie, basically the whole first world is ignored in fact. And I will say I do find the Undersea Kingdom a good bit less interesting than the Frozen one, but while I don't think the movie has a lot going for it, it has a lot less going against it. The pacing is tighter and the story's more focused. While there are pauses for lore dumping, I think the presentation is better, and it actually ends up being relevant to the direct events following instead of only being set up for the future film. Howard needs to know this stuff, and he turns the knowledge given to him for the sake of crushing his spirit into a weapon of his own to get around the villain's plans. I still don't give a shit about Howard, but I can get something out of him here. He wants to know this stuff, and it's his desire to know what he shouldn't that makes him unique. I like him learning magic and lessons through that, and I like his father playing a greater role. It's these small things and the lack of things going against it that make for an overall stronger movie in my eyes, and what I'd say might not even be bad. With less bigger issues, now the main problems are just the often flat characters and the really bad animation and voice acting. Except even the voice acting I think is better now. Cthulhu and Howard's mum are still poorly delivered, but as a Trekkie and a fan of Transformers Prime, it was a delight to hear the distinctive tones of Jeffrey Combs coming out of the villain. And both his character and the actual villain were far more entertaining, actually effective, and not stupid compared to the last movie's villain. Yeah, I would consider Undersea Kingdom an okay film. It's not really that bad.
I'm Michelangelo. I say random things. LOL.
Okay. Turtles Forever runs the gambit from loving tribute to unintentional slander piece with masterful incompetency. It's ridiculous how much this movie fucking sucks at being a good crossover. On one hand, you have the 2003 Turtles, handled fairly well, though maybe Raph is a little too much of a dick in this. On the other hand, you have the 87 Turtles, who are treated horribly. They are all mischaracterized, entire goofballs with no semblance of their personalities. Leonardo doesn't lead, Donatello is perpetually goofy, about all that works is Raph being a fourth wall breaker. But there are points where they just refuse to take anything seriously and it doesn't fit them. And this isn't just detrimental to representing the characters, but also to the enjoyability and themes of the movie. Yes, Turtles Forever has a theme to it. The theme is that things being goofy and sillier or darker and edgier doesn't make them worse or better than each other. The movie wanted to be a counterpoint to the arguments within the fanbase at the time very clearly, not just people debating as to which series they prefer, but the then intense spite and hatred between the 87 and 03 fans in the fanbase. The 2003 Turtles see the 87 Turtles as too silly and goofy, while the 87 Turtles see the 2003 Turtles as too serious and moody, directly representative of the issues people strawman the series they dislike with. But when the classic Turtles show up, and are genuinely way more dark and serious than either, yet are willing to work with them upon realizing they're on the same side, that represents the themes of all Turtles deserving to exist, regardless of if they are dark or goofy. Ninja Turtles can be all things, they all exist equally. The 2003 series isn't any darker than what came before. The 87 series isn't any less goofy relative to the original concepts than the 2003 show is. That's the core idea. It is there to bridge the fanbase together. All series are a bit goofy and a bit dark at points, but they all deserve to exist. This does not work when the 87 Turtles are so comically dumbed down. Leonardo shouldn't be acting this silly, Donnie probably shouldn't either. They should be capable of getting serious when things get bad. But it's weird because most of the rest of the 87 side is not nearly this bad. Shredder and Krang are basically perfect with their bickering and incompetence. Bebop and Rocksteady are on point, the mutagen is rightfully a big deal, and it affects a 2003 villain in Hun, leading to a really cool mixture of both shows in one character. I like when the universe starts dying, Hun is willing to help the Turtles, because yeah, he was like that in his show too. 87 Splinter is a treat, despite only having one scene really. He's given full respect, and the ways in which he echoes the 2003 Splinter are fantastic. On that note, I do love that the 87 Turtles do stop goofing off when the 2003 Splinter is present. I kinda wish the original Splinter was there too, but whatever. The original comic Turtles are on point, I love how they're animated, their voices really fit, the narration bit was killer. They're so intense that even Shirelle is freaked out for a moment. All these elements are done fantastically, and I love Shirelle's evilness in this. He's happy to kill himself and the multiverse, wiping out infinite living beings solely because 4 of the people dying in each of those infinite universes will be those fucking turtles. He is such a hater that he chooses Omniversal Armageddon over having to live knowing the Ninja Turtles will always exist. Fucking take notes, Dio. Surprisingly meta too, without wiping out these prime turtles would effectively kill the entire fanbase and thus multiverse. No explanation is given. This pre-2010s movie just genuinely trusted its audience to understand the meta subtext. Like, this feels ahead of its time, to a degree. The ending with Bebop and Rocksteady accidentally taking out the Shredder is hilarious too. Like, you can feel at points there is a genuine love for the 87 Turtles show. I just don't know how they fumbled the Turtles themselves so badly. And that's the thing, if they had fumbled everything else but got the Turtles right, it wouldn't feel as bad because the Turtles are the main focus. But because the Turtles are what they fucked up, it just really brings the movie down. They are constantly making the worst jokes in the film and just being really annoying. And yeah, it ruins what the movie's going for. I think it's a bad crossover that fails at its message. It has moments of greatness, but that's just it. It also has moments of incompetence. This could have been phenomenal, but instead it ends up being just kind of bad. I feel without context it's probably quite a fun film, but it was made especially for the fans, and as one of those, I think it only got worse with time. Especially as more crossovers began to happen later on, this lost the novelty it had and has ended up feeling like the worst of its kind.
Nothing personal. It's just revenge.
Heavy Metal 2000 is a movie made for a very specific audience. It has an edgy, try-hard story about the protagonist seeking revenge because the villain killed everyone they cared about, with no attempt at nuance or commentary of any kind. Our main protagonist is a badass action lady who would rip apart anyone who even stares at her kilometer-wide cleavage, yet also regularly strips naked across the film with varying levels of justifiability. There's lots of bloodshed and gore, along with pointless objectification of women, and sexual assault themes at every turn. It also has barely any connection to the first film. For its audience, I don't think it's bad. I don't personally rank it as high as its original, as that movie had a great setup and the varying stories meant that I could somewhat look past the dated depiction of women as objects because the film kept putting new and sometimes interesting ideas in front of me. But 2000's film, I think, is only enjoyable to a certain crowd, to a level beyond even the first. All of what I described it as would either be appealing or detrimental depending on the viewer. For an edgy 2000s adult animated feature, I think it's fairly consistently entertaining with some stuff going for it. The action can be cool. I do think how Julie doesn't feel any shame in being naked at a few points can make her a stronger character who isn't willing to let the social norms of women shouldn't be allowed to show off their bodies get in the way of her completing her goal. I actually think the fact that her being naked is almost never used explicitly for the benefit of the male characters and always only of her volition and power makes it far more reasonable. I mean, yes, it's still definitely just there for male gaze of the audience, but in universe as a character, she's never doing it for others. The movie also doesn't try to make her come across like a genuine hero, so her also not often endangering unrelated people allows parts of her to come together to be a fairly charming, almost likable character. I also like Goofy Rockman, of course. Unfortunately, it has a few pretty big issues regardless of taste, like a slightly drawn out storyline and a really dumb fuck ending, where this guy reveals himself to be a hideous CGI monster seeking to use magic rock from the first film, though it's never actually identified by name here, and seems to have lost any of its established mind-altering powers. But instead of doing something to make sure he isn't stopped from achieving his goal, he walks away. But thankfully, walking away and letting the heroine live doesn't punish him, because instead, Rockman shows up and foils his plan without him being able to do anything to stop it. That's it. None of this is helped by the occasional completely pointless scene, like the seduction scene that adds nothing and only serves to put in another scene where Julie is naked, or the snogging scene, which is just there to make sure the guys holding their cocks waiting for a hefty stroke can suddenly have their erections forechecked. Or the fact the movie can often be very ugly, notably all the CGI is horribly dated, and the explosions all look like stock effects that the nostalgia critic would be ashamed to find if they found their way into any of his episodes. Suffice to say, it's a very mixed bag of a movie, but I think it's also a very simple one to talk about. If you are its target audience, you'll be a great time. If you're not, don't even try. Just don't even bother. Yes, when I said that I could kinda look past the dated depiction of women in the first Heavy Metal, put a lot more emphasis on the word kinda. Heavy Metal is a very strange movie. A mythicized movie that was once talked about as a privilege to get to watch, due to how hard it was to come across, and how 1981 was not quite a time where this kind of excessive gore and nudity, especially in animated science fantasy, tended to be very common. But today, it's just kind of a weird movie. The album is fantastic, music's great, constantly enjoyable, a microcosm of late 70s to early 80s metal that is always worth bopping one's head. And the whole setup of the sum of all evils melting the person who found it, and then going out of its way to traumatize the child before killing her simply for the love of it, is not only a pretty cool way to frame the story, but also a characterful and shockingly effective opening. Unfortunately, the following anthology film reeks of its era, and this isn't like a 1950s piece of work featuring racism of its time where I can overlook as, yeah, okay, it was the 1950s, that's what it was like. This movie was less than 50 years ago, and it includes issues that remained until relatively recently. Insane objectification of women and nudity that for the most part exists just because women be sexy and men deserve to look at them. And like the only time I can kind of really overlook it is like the first segment, because it's a tribute to film noir and that is how that genre was made back in the day. It is a simple short story that kind of works what it's going for, but as it goes on it only becomes worse. The second segment is my least favorite. A white dude turns into this guy, and then gets a ton of pussy and talks about how crazy and awesome it is. And then he does some pointless action, condemns Earth to having to deal with 2 immortal monsters with his magic powers, at least that's what he thinks is happening, and he's okay with abandoning his family and friends forever because he can fuck any woman he wants here. Yikes. Captain Stern is the third segment and very funny. It's just a trial where a guy sends a bunch of shit, turns monstrous, tears everything apart, and then Stern reveals that he paid the guy to go on the rampage pretending he wants to kill Stern. Then he opens a trap door that ejects him into space. How did it not eject Stern too? Who knows? Captain Stern is built different. B-17 immediately transitions smoothly from that segment, being a really cool bit where a plane gets affected by the MacGuffin of the movie and zombies happen. The one survivor escapes, finds himself in a field of planes from various time periods where their zombie crews are ready to kill him. A solid horror short that on its own could have worked. I love the idea of just all these planes from different time periods in this area crashing down due to zombies, and so there's just, as time goes on, this field of zombies from different eras where planes crashed. It's so interesting. So Beautiful, So Dangerous starts amusing, but then it just becomes all about robot sex and drugs, and yeah, you can kind of tell this one was just there to shock you, I guess. Finally, we get Tana, which does include tons of female objectification, but hey, at least this time the woman gets to also be a badass that kicks total ass. That's fun. Anyway, then it just kind of ends with the thingy exploding and the little girl escapes and is the reincarnation of the badass woman we just saw or something like that. I don't know how any of that happened. And that's that. The movie's over. This film is carried by its great soundtrack and honestly consistently very enjoyable animation, because as an anthology, it's not particularly all that. It is very much of its time, but today I think it holds a place as just an alright film. I'd recommend only checking it out if you can handle something that's obviously just a bunch of 80s teen boy fantasies. Otherwise, don't bother with the movie, check out the soundtrack, it's pretty good, and leave it at that.
What are you gonna do, big guy? Sit on me?
Rumble is fine. Everything this movie does, I think it either does slightly above or a little below average. In concept, giant monsters exist, and giant monster wrestling is a big sport of this world, makes for a fantastic baseline. Some of the monsters I think even look fantastic, like Tentacular and this Ram Beast. But the movie really falls flat in its pacing and honestly its originality beyond the premise. The film is full of so many general sports movie cliches. Characters wanting to live up to their all-star parents, verbatim learning to be yourself instead of trying to be that other guy, 2 up-and-coming underdogs doing their best to rise up and face off against the worldwide star. It's just so on so forth. It's pretty boring, honestly. Nothing is particularly original here beyond our main hero, Mr. I Am Steve, being a dancer and doing that. Except this is where my pacing issues come in. The movie really takes its time to introduce Steve, and from then on is fairly paced up to his first fight, which admittedly ends in a really funny last moment. And then it kind of just has the dancing thing come out of nowhere, and then speed runs the next 3 matches in Steve's rise to stardom. There's an occasional brief storyline about Steve and this big bird woman who wants money back, and yeah, he makes all the money in that montage, that's it, money over. Anyway, then there's his fight with Tentacular, and it just kind of ends in the middle of what is otherwise a fairly standard final scene in the sports movie. Rather unfortunate, because this is the highlight of the film for me. Most of the monster fights are barely shown or not very interesting, leaving me wanting a lot, but that final fight was fairly solid. Even then, Steve randomly at the end becomes a good enough fighter to completely rock the world champ's shit in, takes the belt despite it not being a title defense match, and wins it with an ass bash. That's the thing, every time there's an interesting or good element, there's a counter. The commentators and Terry Crews are very funny in this movie, but the main heroes aren't and constantly lampshade bullshit and it's super unfunny. The animation is very solid, but the fights are often cut away from so you don't get to see a lot of it. It's a fine movie, like it's a decent watch and has nice elements. I laughed a few times, both from stuff like the commentator's unexplained familial problems or the steel chair joke, and from just the charisma of some performances. If nothing else, there are some great shots showing off the scale of the monsters, that at least that's something. To be honest, I'd say watch Real Steel instead if you want your novelty giant things fight sport movie. Yeah, go watch Real Steel instead, that movie's good. Sabrina Friends Forever is the first film on this list that's connected to a series I watched specifically for this video. In case you're wondering, I've already seen 2003 and 1987 Ninja Turtles. Friends Forever also happens to be the only one of those that actively suffers for it, except for Turtles Forever. I quite like Sabrina the Animated Series. It's a very solid, enjoyable show, heavily carried by some great voice work and self-awareness. The movie doesn't have any of that. The voices are very different, which is most distracting and unfortunate for Salem, who doesn't nearly have half the dry wit as his sitcom or animated counterparts. The movie is also not nearly as self-aware, and it doesn't really seem to have any connection to the show beyond the designs of Sabrina, Hilda, and Zelda. Not even Salem, he just looks different. The continuity makes no sense. Sabrina doesn't have much control over her magic and needs to go to school despite having turned 13, with the animated series being her as 12 and having way more magic control and having already gone to school in one of the episodes. There's no real connection here. Thankfully, the movie itself is fairly solid. The general message of be proud of who you are is a solid one. I like the friendship between Sabrina and Nicole, and the not original but fairly well handled take on the whole, oh Sabrina, don't try to be who you are, don't hide yourself to be friends with the popular kids who are bullies, be who you are, don't care what they think bit. I like Nicole, I thought she was cool, and the two's friendship and journey is solid. This wasn't the most Sabrina feeling of stories, at least in the whole like wacky spells and rhyming wasn't very prominent, and Salem took a major back seat. And I didn't find the movie that funny either, which is a shame. But it's hard to say the movie is bad. I think it's solid. I like the characters, the message is fine. There's nothing original here, but it's okay. It's an alright movie, and I am already out of stuff to say.
Welcome to hell, motherfucker.
Lady Death the motion picture I remember liking a lot more than I do now. The film has a few things I do genuinely think are going for it. The voice acting usually is decent and the animation at a standstill looks great. The dark tone is appreciatively close to the source material and they don't play up the sex appeal of the protagonist half as much as one would expect given said source material. Yeah, that's about it. The movie suffers in many places from the constant pointless fades to black, to the weird pacing that starts fine, then suddenly goes into a training montage, and then seems to continue just like speeding through Lady Death actually building her forces up, just so we can get to the final battle as soon as possible. Said final battle, mind you, is very uninteresting as an army fight. It's barely animated, and we get a fight between the main hero and villain that is essentially just her getting her ass beat until her puppets bring her sword to her and she instantly wins. Lucifer doesn't really have the presence in this film that his first appearance sets up, and isn't that menacing given he only wins because Lady Death's unarmed, and once she gets her sword back, he dies. There's like some souls going to heaven or something, and Lady Death swears to commit genocide because Lucifer is all that matters to her. Something that I find hard to believe in this film, seeing as the two people she really cared about have now gone to eternal paradise, and the montage nature of the movie's entire second act leaves you struggling to attach yourself to the length of her conflict. You don't feel like she's been in their conflict for ages upon ages, because it's just shown in a very quick montage. She does not come across as a character so steeped in hatred that it's all she has motivating her or giving her a meaning to go on. It feels like she's doing it out of obligation. Cremator also doesn't feel like much of anything. Hell, Death herself doesn't feel like much of a character. Unfortunately, this movie doesn't have much appeal unless you're a person who knows the comics and just wants to see some of the stuff faithfully presented on screen. In which case, cool, but otherwise, it's okay.
That is a rock!
Turok Son of Stone is let down by one major thing. Turok himself is such a fucking loser in this movie. Okay, so to be clear, he is a capable fighter. He's a stone cold badass. He does some pretty impressive stuff. He's also fucking lame. He is a boring blank kill guy who doesn't feel like he has any depth or interest going on. I don't feel anything from him. His vocal deliveries are flat and his personality is just general brooding loner dude. I understand we are talking about a character from 1954, but you know what, I've actually read some of those comics, and no, Turok is not just a flat, brooding loner guy. He is a clever, thoughtful guy who often considers how people feel and just wants to look out for his brother Andar. But in this movie, no, he's just dude man. It's a real shame too, because I do think the movie does a decent bit right. The animation is fairly simple, yeah, but I like its style. It's good enough for a direct-to-video release. It has some badass dinosaur action, some cool fights, and the lingering theme of losing a home and Turok dealing with his bloodlust are fine for what it's worth. But damn, this story is slow and drab, trying to get some kind of mature adult feeling across as it broods over the bloodshed and the carnage. Something I would be more interested in if, again, I gave a single fuck about Turok. What doesn't help is his whiny and unintimidating villain who comes with his army of Neanderthals? I don't know, the world is very weird. And his guns are like very quiet for some reason. He has guns! Yeah, I didn't think too much of this movie. I don't think it does anything particularly wrong, at least not any more wrong than most other Turok things I've experienced in how they handle the Native American stuff. It's slow, but I know why. Its characters are simple, but not atrocious. I guess I felt something when bro falls off a bridge. Not really though, then it ends. Okay, yeah. Son of Stone is only notable for being the closest you'll get to an accurate depiction of the comics.
Veronica! Sweetheart, when did you get here?
Hey!
The Archies and Jugman is a follow-up film for the 40-episode series Archie's Weird Mysteries, a show that I think is fairly decent. The characters are distinct and fun, the weird mysteries have a lot of range and can be really out there sometimes, and I have little to complain about. There's not much in the way of character development or really that many stories of note, but that's what you can expect from an episodic series like that. I guess I wish it wasn't so focused on Archie's love life, but it's Archie, so of course it was gonna be. And Jughead is also the best character, it's not even close. As for the movie, I found it somewhat disappointing, if not necessarily bad. It's just a bit naff that for the movie follow-on to a show with alien invasions, a vampire doomsday cult, and random bullshit every day, the movie is about a caveman version of Jughead, who isn't really a threat of note and nothing really happens. Like, yeah, it's fine for what it is. It's nice and I like these characters enough to enjoy it, but how much can I really give credit to stuff like, look, it's Moose who does Moose stuff? I love Jughead for sure, but he's not a lead character, he's best in moderation. In this movie there's two of him, and no villain. It's oddly placid and tame. They don't even really have any mystery to solve. They figure out pretty quickly what went on, and then there's some pointless stuff with Reggie trying to make a quick buck, and a mystery about who ate some bugs that feels completely unnecessary and tacked on. I guess if there's any solace is that these characters get to have a happy ending, but I don't know, it's just an okay movie. But at least for once in this continuity, this movie gets to let us have Archie and his band. Even if that's not even close to Archie's voice singing.
He's a panda. You're a panda.
Panda vs. Aliens is, as expected, a completely nonsense what-the-fuck movie, and I can't even find a source I had that said this was based on a comic. Anyway, the nonsense was not to its benefit at first. Being an Arcana Studios movie, it was written terribly, and animated so primitively that its status as a movie must attract ancient alien conspiracists to try and figure out how the master race guided the primitive creators. The characters are the worst kind of self-aware. Not innocently self-aware without realizing their own faults, and not self-aware in an actually fun and endearing way, but like the movie knows it sucks and hopes that by dressing up all the bad dialogue with, wow, wasn't that hokey, it can get away with it, all while unaware as to how insincere it comes across. Nobody has any sort of charisma except King Korath, who was by far the best character. He was funny, he was enjoyably performed, and he actually delivered his self-aware lines in a very, he's being self-aware on purpose because he doesn't give a fuck way that added to his characterization. So anyway, as the story begins and we set up the events, the movie tips its hand as to what's going to happen within the first 10 minutes. We have a hero actor who wants to be a real hero like his ancestors and believes his ancient medallion is fake. We have a villain actor who wants to get a redemption arc, an alien invasion, and the invader's son is mentioned to be on the side of the heroes. What a shock! The invader's son helps out, the hero becomes a real hero, the medallion is not fake, the villain actor has a redemption arc after a brief evil stint. No shock. It's kinda slow and boring and dull, and I kinda hate the characters too, so why is it up here? Because the whole escape bit is somewhat charming, and the villain being beaten with a yo mama tax claim is really funny. Oh, that and the giant fucking space mech battle out of nowhere, featuring the giant mecha ape against the Green Lantern construct panda, who saves the day with a Gurren Lagann Quagmire armed super punch. That'll do it. That'll save a movie. This made it all worth it. Truly a genuinely magical sequence. Put these guys in as the next Giga Bash DLC. Come on!
Pleased to meet you. I am TikTok.
The Clockwork Girl is an inoffensive and uninteresting film. I mean, I say that, but I actually really like the concept behind the movie and the ideas it has. I feel like a steampunk world built around a plague is far from unique, but the idea of a society being split between the two greatest minds who have equally effective but otherwise only temporary fixes to the problem is great. We have a biologist who attaches animal parts to fix what the plague takes, and a technologist who builds new parts from scratch to replace what you've lost. It's a great idea and I think makes for a fantastic baseline. But this whole dichotomy of technology and nature being equally effective in their ineffectiveness is just not really dealt with. The rivalry between the sides and their prejudices is not the focus at all. So what is? Well, the two doctors make children who are a robot daughter who loves nature and a Frankenstein together son who is interested in technology. It goes about as expected. And that's fine. I just feel like these two don't have much going on. In particular, the monster boy Huxley never got me attached to him. At least the Clockwork Girl Tesla is slightly charming, but like, yeah, they get close and they do shit. At some point, the movie starts to stray away from the interesting setting, just to be about the two of them trying to escape and finding out the truth of the plague as a machine created by mankind. It works, I get the message, I think the reveal and villain himself is fine, but as far as this message goes, there's not much nuance, which doesn't make for the most interesting film. I could criticize the animation too, but at this point, if you're expecting Arcana Studios to produce anything half well animated, it's on you. This is probably the best they've made something look. It's charming enough. I like the designs and the animations for the doctors, they're fun. I also really like some of the aesthetic, especially these knights. At first they're kind of creepy because they just kind of hobble around without giving much away as to what they do. And then suddenly they burst open to these fucking monster bird mechs, and that's sick as hell. I do like the final battle overall, and there happens to be a lot of those bird mechs around too, which might explain it. The songs are sometimes good, but they're also entirely out of place and come from nowhere. Yeah, would I recommend The Clockwork Girl? Probably not, but I don't think it's a bad time. It drops the ball on all of its interesting ideas, but I think it's fun enough for the most part. There can be some fun found with the characters escaping this place, the aforementioned final battle. It's not a total waste of time. This is the closest Arcana Studios has come to making a real movie, and I do think it's only held back by some weird writing choices that might just be because it's really beholden to the comics from what I've seen. I think it has a great setting, and I honestly wouldn't mind even seeing a sequel.
Go by 4 dark devas of destruction!
Chickenhare and the Hamster of Darkness has a lot of good building blocks. The animation, voice acting, and the pacing is all fine. It's very paint by numbers for a modern animated kids film. Girl boss, badass woman who can beat anyone in a fight, pointless comic relief character who only exists to sometimes be useful, borderline useless hero who learns to be halfway decent but the woman probably still kicks his ass. Nothing you haven't seen before, but also nothing offensive. It's just kind of stereotypical of the current era. It's not bad that it's like that. There are movies like that I think are solid. But this one is, The main villain is after a MacGuffin, the hero gets it, the villain steals it, the hero saves the day because the villain didn't properly ensure he's dead. There's the father that says what makes you different makes you special. It's what's on the inside that counts, and the hero finds that in the end too. Again, like, it's nothing bad, it's just nothing special. You know, it's ironic to have the message of what makes you different makes you special in a movie that does nothing different and thus has nothing special. It doesn't really tackle these ideas in a strong way. It just kind of does it by reminding us constantly that Chickenhare is insecure because he's half chicken. And of course, being half chicken is what saves the day. Don't be the person you think you have to be due to societal pressures, be who you really are and you'll be happy. Like, okay, that's a good message. You could also get that message from Gurren Lagann and get to see some awesome action sequences instead. But let's not just, like, compare this to other stuff. Okay. Let's just look at the movie. Let's try to just look at the movie. Okay. The message isn't done with any kind of strong emotional power, but a kid could probably enjoy it. Comedy is mostly just okay. Action is mostly just okay. Fucking everything is mostly just okay. I don't really like or dislike Chickenhare or Meg, and Meg's whole arc of her glumtastic farts and nothing to be ashamed of is unintentionally really funny to me. I can get the point, but you're making a character whose whole dramatic arc revolves around the fact that she has really stinky farts. Overall, I'd call Chickenhare an okay kids film about not being ashamed of who you are. Especially for my fellow half-breeds who feel like they need to be one of their nationalities and not the other. But having gone through the exact same stuff as Chickenhare, the fact that I didn't feel anything probably speaks for itself. I think on its own that would make this movie, you know, rank okay. It is fine. It's one of those films that's like, it's a good kids film, not because kids deserve worse, but because it's of a level of quality where it's in that little niche where a kid could enjoy it, but anyone older probably couldn't. Oh, there's one thing I haven't mentioned though. I fucking hate Abe in this movie. He is an annoying piece of shit pessimist character, and not a funny one. Like, I kinda remember liking the asshole kid in the Polar Express, but all Abe exists to do is complain, say meta self-aware jokes about tropes as if the movie is somehow better than the tropes, and choosing to use them because the movie has no choice. It would rather not, though, so let's make fun of those tropes we're forced to use. And then he acts as if he contributed. Each of these characters represents a different kind of thing. Chickenhare is someone of mixed heritage, embarrassed by one side of him who learns to accept both of his heritages. Meg is a look down upon race, who admittedly is about as dodgy as that message always is when it's trying to correlate different animal species with different human races, and Abe has a physical deformity that he was born with and needs to learn to accept. He was born without a shell, which for a turtle means he has no ribcage. At all. But this is only mentioned in one scene for one plot relevant thing and never again. This message barely applies to anyone with a physical deformity. Thanks, Abe, good job. Oh, and his voice is annoying. He's never shutting up with the bitching and moaning. I'm sure I've enjoyed several characters of his archetype, but Abe has no charm and no character. I hate him. Gen 13 is an odd movie. It's simultaneously a really dark and dour film with lots of themes about child soldiers, genetic experimentation, and also not a small amount of blood, murder, sexual implication, and some softcore nudity. On the other hand, you get scenes like this. Yeah, it can be a pretty goofy, silly superhero story, not out of place on a children's cartoon channel. And frankly, that's kind of how it feels structurally. It feels more like a 4-part opening arc to a superhero cartoon packaged together as a movie on DVD. I say this knowing fully well that this movie barely got released at all, let alone on DVD. But that's how it feels. Which doesn't make it bad at all, it's just like an oddly paced superhero origin story. The main characters don't get stuck into the superpower generating machine until 20 minutes in, about where the first episode would end. The second episode is their whole fight around that time. The third episode is their climactic fight and their 2 secondary characters getting their powers. And the last 20 minutes is the battle with the villain of the arc who seemingly dies at the end, but you know it's going to show up in a later episode. Maybe even grapple with his morality. This then comes down to the reveal that our villain is actually our hero's brother, feeling like a reveal that fits in an episodic series that's laying the foundation for what's to come. Because, yeah, he just immediately dies. It doesn't feel like a natural reveal to put into the climax of the movie. It genuinely feels like that's there because it's the end of the first episode, first 4-parter episode. He's gonna get knocked over, fall down, and then, he's gonna come back, he's gonna grapple with his morality, maybe have a face turn. And hell, John Delancey over here straight up only appears in 3 scenes. What's up with that? I can fully admit that while some things didn't work for me, like most of the humor and some of the voice acting, the animation is totally my jam. I love this era of animation and its later evolutions like Generator X and the like. The late 90s to mid 2000s animation inspired by Batman the Animated Series, which I understand shares some animators with this film. It looks great, it moves great, the action's great. The final fight with Threshold, where all the heroes have to work together to take him down, is really fucking good. And to be honest, I'd say that's kind of your lot with Gen 13. These characters aren't up to much on their own. Caitlin, the protagonist, doesn't feel like much of a character, even if she has a tangible arc from bookworm nervous wreck to confident action hero. Grunge and Roxy are pretty one-note but fun enough. The villains are cool but not particularly developed. That's how I label it. I do think, if you want to watch the 4-part opening arc to a show that does not exist, this is a great choice. Or if you just want a simple superhero story that doesn't ask for much except about an hour of your time. It is a solid enough thing. I think it's good. Yeah, that's it.
Game number 1, Fire Breather.
Fire Breather is alright. I do not have much to say. The movie's only 69 minutes long and most of it doesn't matter. The animation is okay, it's a solid enough looking movie with some really awkward character design at points. Like, our main character looks just a bit off and not in the way he's supposed to in the comic. I think the drama of him being the son of the monster king of kaiju and the ultimate enemy of mankind, despite having a human mother, could have been used more. You know, like in the comic, his relationship with his fellow students really wasn't developed properly. I don't care about them, and I felt like a lot of the story was just going nowhere. Like, he starts kaijuing up, his dad appears and brings him to meet the other kaiju, they attack when he goes back, he fights back, movie over. Not much was gained, but also not much was lost. I think it's just a short movie, which leaves me with very little to say beyond, yeah, action's good, effects are solidly well done, I enjoyed it because it was short enough to not overstay its welcome. I do like some of the kaiju designs too, they're pretty cool. And, you know, given this character is a canonical friend of Invincible in the comics, I would love to see him, Shadowhawk, the other one, I think Zephyr, and Pink Mark hanging out in the cartoon series at some point, especially if they get Jesse Head to come back to reprise his role as Duncan. Otherwise, yeah, it's a decent film. It's just also like a bit forgettable.
Nanomachine, son!
Alright, so Heroes United is really just 2 episodes of Generator Rex that involve him crossing over with Ben 10.
But thanks for the tip!
However, by the time I found out it wasn't a proper crossover film, I'd already watched over 2 seasons of Generator Rex. So, fuck it, here it is. Heroes United is fun. But it's just, that's it, it's just fun. It doesn't do anything particularly to stand out aside from the brief upgrade Rex moment and the Ultimatrix powered Alpha Nanites. But it doesn't do anything wrong either. This setup is solid, the prerequisite heroes fight it out moment is cool, the obligatory final team up is cool. I'm not sure what else there is to say, it's a 44-minute special. It does play out like an episode of Generator Rex, and I guess I don't mind that. I would have liked more Ben 10, I suppose, seeing as he's barely represented beyond himself. And it does feel like this should have been a 3-parter and more actual movie links so it could better develop the titular heroes bonding. Maybe have something to do with Ben 10 that isn't just Ben himself, but for what it is, it's fun. It doesn't inspire much. These last 3 have been a real breeze. They were all just basic, fun, end of story. The most interesting thing here is that most of you probably don't know that Generator Rex is based on a comic that lasted like 2 issues.
And I say, Zangief, you are bad guy. But this does not mean you're bad guy.
The Bad Guys 2 is fun. Is it a great movie? No, but it's good and solid. It's so inconsistent at some things, like the comedy ranges from absolute bangers like the all will die trying bit that just hard goes to their grave, and then there's some like the cacophony of farts at the end that show no soul. The story is very inconsistent. There are some really good moments that manage to show a lot of character and even address some pretty solid themes. The movie sets up a great story about the difficulties of reformed criminals trying to reintegrate into society, how those who have genuinely redeemed themselves and turned over a better leaf are often pushed down by everyone. They are usually forced to go back to a life of crime because they have no choice. Is that a bit of a heavy theme for a kids film? This is DreamWorks. They produced these little known masterpieces by the name of Prince of Egypt, Kung Fu Panda 2, Puss in Boots and The Last Wish that involve ethnic cleansings and the inevitability of death. No, this is not too heavy a theme, and they actually set this up. They just do nothing with it. That might be the worst part of this movie, how much it just goes nowhere. The cheat becoming a commissioner? Doesn't matter. It gets one line at the end that almost makes me feel a slight raise of the eyebrow. The governor getting her identity leaked online? Well, that ends up going nowhere. She barely addresses it, and the fact that a politician probably would get off scot-free is not acknowledged. The main villains? Frankly, there's little going on with them. There's a silly boar girl who is funny enough. There's the awfully named Doom, who only exists so that Snake's entire personality can now revolve around her, which is just a big shame. He's one of the most interesting characters, but his relationship with her is pretty much his whole role in this film. And then there's Tai Ling, the female Tai Lung, who they absolutely knew what they were doing with. This is an omega furry bait movie. In fact, it is an Omicron level code red fetish film. Farts, inflation, vor, just the tip of the iceberg of this movie about animal people. But I really wish there was more to Tai Ling. She has some kind of belief about fear being the most important thing that barely feels like it gets acknowledges and barely applies to Wolf. And I really kind of feel like they did set up Wolf having second thoughts and considering that going back to a life of crime might be the only way to make a living because none of them will be able to land a job before they're evicted. That could have been really interesting considering he was the first one to turn good in the original film. And then immediately the girls turn on the guys, beat them up, and now they're heroes again. It's just so weird, and again, it feels like they put something in just to not do anything with it. This movie is so lucky that it has some of the best animation on this list, with some extremely good fight scenes, some great comedic moments, and just beautiful effects along with the gorgeous character animation. It's so nice to look at, and given the characters are fun enough, it makes the movie really enjoyable to watch. Mr. Shark especially is a delight, as with the first movie. It's just that, unfortunately, they don't do much with anything else. Wolf and Diane even snog in this film, but they barely interact. In fact, Diane is barely in the movie. She appears at the start, has one phone call, talks with the awful looking buff Richard Ayoade, who admittedly has a better performance than he did in the first movie, and then disappears for the rest of the film before one action scene that leads to her being knocked out and not showing up again until the final scene. Wolf doesn't interact with her once outside of that opening. And while the first movie, I think, did enough to set something up between them, romantically even, I think that this film on its own should have done more to build up to that kiss. Because, frankly, they do nothing in this movie. The first one was a good setup, a good baseline, a good general opening, but it should have been more. And aside from Wolf and Snake, none of the bad guys get any development further, which is a shame. Like, Webbs has some setup as like, the newbie rookie who wants to prove herself. She's the youngest, newest member of the bad guy crew in this flashback. Yeah, her being the young one is never addressed or important. Piranha? Nope. And Shark? Well, he doesn't need it, but they did add pure violence into his repertoire, which I am fine with. God, it's hard to express why I like this film when it has so much wrong with it. Like, yeah, it has all these problems that really drag it down. But hear me out, it's fun. The movie is fun and enjoyable. Ideally, if I ever did a ranking of just good movies, this would be the, like, ideal middle tier movie. Fun movie that drops a lot of balls, but holds on to quite a few as well. Neither bad nor one of the greats. I feel like in this ranking it's going to be a bit higher than I'd like, but I swear, I promise, it's a good, enjoyable film with a single fun heist and a lot of fun action scenes. That ending is dumb though. The bad guys are becoming government agents, what the fuck? The bad guys, one, is hard carried by some fantastic animation. Where have we heard that before? This movie looks great and moves great. It has perfect cartoony fun animation, great expression work, and is just... man, it looks nice. The characters I'd also accuse of being really enjoyable. None of them are all that interesting, but it's a fun movie because it's fun characters in fun situations doing fun things. Unfortunately, I have to rank this movie a bit lower than I'd like because the writing and story kinda blows. The start of the movie is really fun, but once the story starts, it becomes pretty clear what's going to happen. Obviously, they're going to fail the heist. Oh, they want to pretend to get redeemed? Obviously, the protagonist one's going to actually become a good guy, and it's going to be a conflict between him and his friends. Obviously, the nice little dude is the twist villain. No surprises, no shocks, very basic movie. You can see a mile away what's happening, and normally I wouldn't rank those too much at all. But as said, the movie looks great. It has a few banger jokes as well. I love the news anchor basically reporting that nobody changes, all stereotypes are confirmed, and all the books should be judged by their covers. That's just a really funny representation of news journalism. It's not enough for me to call the movie great, but I think it's a fun enough watch that I'd say it might be the bad guys, but it's not the bad movie. Why is it ranked above the second film? Honestly, I think they're very close in terms of quality, but for me, I just feel like this movie actually picks up everything it puts down. As mentioned, The Bad Guys 2 has a lot of through lines that don't go anywhere. It has things that aren't fully fleshed out. While The Bad Guys 1 doesn't flesh everything out either, the main crew outside of Wolf aren't set up for arcs. The second film gave the Governor-in-Chief much less to do and didn't really do much interesting, while the first one does everything it needs to with its characters. While it is more generic and doesn't take as many risks, I think in this case, playing to just the basic story and doing that adequately wins out for me. It's a close race though, so it's a much of a muchness thing.
It is the blade!
Hellboy Sword of Storms is, maybe boringly, a very solid movie. I mean in the sense of the movie doesn't do anything particularly standout or worth really going into. Like yeah, the animation isn't always the most amazing, but it has a great look that really brings these comic designs to life, and oddly meshes super well with the live action actors reprising their roles. Yeah, Ron Perlman just is Hellboy. I cannot imagine anyone else in that role, but I was also surprised at how natural Selma Blair was as Liz. The action's very solid, the monsters look cool, the presentation is top notch for a film like this in the pre-2010s. Now the movie can falter in a few ways. Some of the big monsters can feel oddly anticlimactic in how they're portrayed and defeated, especially the final fight that has some really funny moments and great bits to it, but like the way it ends makes sense but kinda comes like out of nowhere it feels. The dialogue can feel oddly framed where the tone shifts in an awkward way mid-conversation. Abe and Liz's storyline feels really incidental with them just kinda crashing and doing some minor shit. Meanwhile, Kate and co are investigating the origins behind the case the whole movie revolves around, and Hellboy has this really cool journey in another world inspired by Japanese folklore, full of just random fun yokai. Like there's not much of a story going on with him, but just him exploring this world and coming across various monsters that he has to figure out how to deal with while trying to find a way back is oddly captivating. I really like the scenes with Hellboy, and you know, just like the presentations sometimes fall flat, there are also times the writing picks up to a higher level. I love the simple confrontation at the very end, with Hellboy, the least honorable guy from the perspective of pretty much everyone, talks some sense into the angry spirit of this honorable Japanese daimyo. He stands there and you just see his emotion, his changing thoughts as he considers, is his lost honor from times long by worth stopping himself and his daughter from being at peace after death? It's some really nice wordless storytelling that gets across a lot of emotion. That's a great moment. And it really helps that Ron Perlman keeps that particular tone for Hellboy throughout this movie. I don't know how to explain it. He comes across as that perfect midpoint between too casual, yet also trying too hard to be too casual. His quips are never great, but he delivers them as if he thinks he's the toughest motherfucker, and that makes them work. They're not, oh, that's just a bad quip. They are, how can we write a quip that a teen would absolutely think is the coolest thing to say in this moment? But as said, I think there's not much to talk about with this movie. It does its action, comedy, drama, and animation all at a pretty good level. The writing is a bit flawed, the presentation is fantastic. There are times both falter, but times they pick up each other's slack. It's an all-around incredibly solid movie, and a great addition to the parts of Hellboy that I actually give a shit about.
Oh god, natural light!
Hellboy Blood and Iron isn't too big a step up from Sword of Storms, but a step up I do think it is. It's actually even harder to review because it has all the same elements of the first movie that did right, with the animation, voice acting, and presentation all smacking it out the park. They even got Professor Broom in a role, and John Hurt kills it like all the others do. He might have actually been my favourite character in this movie, and his presence allowed for Hellboy's character to get more to do in this one, instead of just action butt-whooping scenes. Broom also just beats vampire Elizabeth Bathory completely solo. That's badass. The Haunted Mansion feels more like a Hellboy location, and the focus on a mystery and its progress as the characters figure out what's going on keeps it engaging. It fixes a lot of the issues I had with Sword of Storms. The dialogue is stronger, it gives Abe and Liz more to do, and a bigger role. They feel more valuable. Adding to this is the climax feeling better, even if it's technically smaller scale. The villain even gets more from Hellboy, as they focus on the classic dichotomy of being a demon who kills his own kind to protect the humans that raised him. That's all I have to say. Blood and Iron doesn't do anything spectacular, but instead is just consistently great from beginning to end, without really ever falling flat. It's one of the most fun movies on this list for me, and one I was happy to rewatch for the video.
And fourth, that whole movie doesn't make much sense to begin with. Why should this?
Okay, look, I know, okay? 2000's TMNT is flawed. It's incredibly flawed. It has major issues, I won't deny it. The movie is too short. At only 76 minutes plus some credits, it tries to tackle way too much for such a runtime. There's Winters, his stone brothers, the 13 monsters, the conflict between Leo and Raph, the Foot and April doing stuff. All in a movie that is incredibly unfriendly somehow to both beginners and hardcore fans. If you don't know anything about the franchise, Kurai's presence will be entirely meaningless to you, and the status of the Turtles' relationship will make it seem like being a bunch of bums is the default. If you're too familiar with the franchise, it starts being confusing as to whether this follows on from the 2003 series, the Henson trilogy, some weird hodgepodge timeline that only exists in the backstory of this movie and its opening sequence. Not to mention there's those monsters and the brothers who are nothing. 2 of the 13 monsters get dedicated scenes to them. Bigfoot, because of course he intends to plague my life continuously, and the Jersey Devil, who exists solely so that Leo finding Raph can be more sensical than otherwise. Of the brothers, General Aguila is the only one with any hint of personality beyond rude and crude. Gato is a bit ferile, Serpentai is a woman, and Mono doesn't speak and has a hammer. They exist for 2 purposes. They are the main villains who help make the he was good all along plot twist of Winter's Land, and they are foils to our protagonists, who are themselves a group of brothers. Something that I appreciate, but don't necessarily like. Because the Stone Generals don't have much in the way of personality, the way in which they contrast the Turtles isn't as strong as it could be. Honestly, it's just that Aguila mirrors Raph in turning on his eldest brother because he thinks he knows better. The others aren't doing much for this. Now, their other purpose in helping Winter's role I think is a success. Patrick Stewart does a great job in this role. He brings Winters to life. He manages to make scenes where you're supposed to think he's the villain work because he gives orders in a way that fits his ancient warlord history, but when he's happy and kind, his tone changes very naturally. It's a great performance that elevates the character, and the reveal that he meant no harm helps with that. The movie's attempt to make him seem evil are sensible looking back. Capturing the monsters can cause chaos, but his plan clearly only involves getting rid of them without causing harm. He wasn't evil in hiring the Foot, because he is rewarded in trusting their loyalty, and in this movie they do mean well. Unfortunately, while the ending to his story is solid, the ending to the movie suffers. Because the villains can only be beaten by sending the 13 monsters back, the turtles' only role is to delay them from getting out and stopping the others from bringing the 13th monster back. This is fine. I think it helps bring the themes together with like the brothers fighting together to protect everyone. However, because the movie has only a little over an hour to go in total, the entire 13th monster hunt is almost entirely off screen, with us only getting a single scene of April and Casey bringing it back. An extra 20 minutes of movie would have allowed us to have the foot finding and luring the monster. That way Karai's role in the movie in helping out finding the 13th monster wouldn't be completely off screen, as well as maybe having some extra time to show some more personality in the other Stone Generals. But why do I still really like this movie and regularly massacre its haters in righteous fury? Because man, it's just good, I don't give a fuck! This is Leo and Raph's film, and this is definitely a little tired by this point. All 5 live-action movies in the franchise that currently exist have a heavy focus on Raph, and often also on Leo, but it is very well done here. I know why many people side with Raph, but the movie does make both reasonable. Leo stayed away too long, yes, but as someone who constantly sees himself as a failure and judges himself harder than anyone else, I understand why he made the wrong choice he did. He only wants what's best for his family, and doesn't know what he's doing. Raph, meanwhile, is impulsive and hot-headed. He's too emotional for his own good, and he stews in that for so long that all the emotions come out in the form of anger even when he doesn't mean it. Their fight is one of the best fights in the franchise. Not only is the fighting itself great, but the storytelling is impeccable and the characters hit. Raph almost killing Leo and his silent, slow realization and horror as to what he nearly did. It really hits. Leo easily winning the first round, but himself getting angry and losing sight costing him the second round, making his own claim earlier of how anger makes you blind ironic as he himself succumbs to it after. Oh man. There's Leo's anger at seeing Raph as the vigilante, which makes so much sense because he started the movie as the ghost of the jungle, killing a bunch of douchebags, and that solved nothing, just like Raph as the Night Watcher. And that was the end of a whole part of Leo's life that he associates with his family falling out. He worries that Raph taking the same road will lead to the same result. It's not because he lacks faith in Raphael, but because he lacks faith in himself to keep everyone together. Unfortunately, I can't deny all of this fantastic character writing relies on the awful writing of Leo somehow not putting together that Raph was the Night Watcher the whole time, despite the fact that Casey figures it out. Speaking of which, Casey, and by extension April, I think were handled quite well. They make a cute couple, I like their chemistry, I like the role they play in the story. Kinda like Splinter, they help to add to the turtle story without feeling like they take up more than is necessary. Their stories are all wrapped up in the end with some very simple but acceptable arcs. Sadly, I can't say the same for Karai, or Donnie and Mikey. Now for Karai, I think it's fine. She clearly exists just to tease a sequel that will sadly never happen. And also, I mean, but Donnie and Mikey deserve way better. Mikey is immature all movie, and like most Mikeys, he strikes an awkward balance between genuinely funny and annoying as shit. But they do something. It's just that his immaturity and how he clearly has grown up a bit by stepping up, but he wants to go back to his silliness now that Leo has returned, and he wants to go back to how it was instead of accepting what it is now. That never gets developed further. It could have been really interesting to show him coming to accept that he can't go back to being the unreliable goof-off, but being okay with that because now that his brothers are all back together, he's okay with taking a new step forward. Donnie doesn't even get that potential turtle treatment. I guess he's also stepping up, but I just feel like his attempt to take Leo's place in taking care of Raph and Mikey is so barely there, I don't even know what could be done, because there's so little to build off of. Unfortunately, this leaves me feeling that, yeah, I love the movie, and it sucks. But, like, you know, the action scenes are all great. The animation is usually, at the very least, acceptable, but sometimes really shines. The final battle is gorgeous, the Raph-Leo fight is gorgeous, I love how nice everything moves. You will never be able to convince me that this movie is bad, even if, honestly, it kind of is in a lot of ways. I will also never be convinced it's perfect, or that most of the criticisms levied towards it aren't true. A lot could have been done better. But permit me, at least this once, to have a fully self-indulgent placement in the ranking. You know, ignoring all the other times I've done that already.
I want you to stay here. Why? Because I hate you.
When it comes to reviewing Nimona, I should make it clear that I am straight and cisgendered, and as such, a lot of the allegorical elements that pertain to the experience of being neither of those may have gone over my head. So this ranking is solely dependent on how I feel about the movie as a movie, and not an allegory for the shit those people who are valid and deserve to live and you're stupid for thinking otherwise have to go through. Something I think is particularly relevant because there were not an insignificant number of times where I felt the obvious solution to a problem was Nimona just not shapeshifting in certain situations. But I had to shelve those thoughts because the allegory made by the movie made me understand, well, it is not fair that she would have to shapeshift to something normal to conform, just for the sake of others. Like, yes, Nimona could stay looking like a human the whole time and not shapeshift inside of anyone, but while that is an obvious solution to the problems, it is itself its own problem. It would run counter to the messages of the film, and very clearly, the problem is not on Nimona, it's on the fucked culture and society that pressure her into doing that. So I do think those elements that I can't fully experience are hard-baked into this movie. But let's talk about the movie as a movie. Nimona is fairly solid and fun. I really liked Ballister, and I thought he was a saint who deserved better, and he really helped carry my interest at first. Which I have to say, because Nimona wasn't really selling me on Nimona at first. The way she just bursts into Ballister's life, makes a mess of his home, makes a ton of assumptions without giving him a chance to speak, it made me feel bad for the guy. I wanted to punt Nimona. It was only later on in the movie that I came to appreciate her and enjoy what she brought to the film, because she is fun sometimes. It's just that at first, she gave me this super self-aware, ergo can get away with anything energy that wasn't doing it for me. In general, I felt like a lot of the characters didn't do much for me. Ambrosius is fine, I like the depth we get in that one freakout, but if you were to take that scene out, he would be a really bland character who just served to enhance Ballister. Todd was a whatever villain who could sometimes be funny, but other times just be annoying. And the director is a thoroughly mediocre villain. I get what she stands for in that, but she's pretty unthreatening and uninteresting to me. The main two are the core of this film though, and that's not a bad thing, because I like them. Ballister and Nimona have a great rapport once they become friends, and they engage in some pretty great action scenes together. The escape at the start is fun, and the fight through the nights is great. Though I kind of feel like there is a chunk of movie missing. Like, Ballister and Nimona make their escape, there's a moment of Nimona being all frustrated while he tries to comfort her, and the movie then immediately jumps into them manipulating a confession from the villain. And then suddenly it feels like they are way closer than they were before, and Ballister is totally okay with overthrowing the establishment. It's not that I don't buy that his character would change in this way, I believe that this is how things would end up, but I feel like something is missing. A scene of these two talking about what went on maybe, some clips of the two bonding properly now that they see eye to eye, the moment of us really seeing Ballister come to terms with how broken the system is. I understand his attempt to play into it didn't work, but I still think there needed to be just one more scene to really make the development hit, and I can't explain it exactly. It doesn't help that not long after this, the movie suddenly jumps into what would be a third act breakup within 5 minutes, except the film is smart enough to not go through with that. Instead, we get a flashback sequence that gives us Nimona's backstory, and I appreciate the minimal dialogue, though it does kind of feel like it comes from nowhere. And the ending? It's good. Nimona becomes a huge hulking monster that is exactly what the people see and expect of her. But at the same time, you notice, she avoids directly harming anyone if she can help it. She doesn't attack anyone. She looks like what they think she is, but that's just not the case. All she wants to do is impale herself on the big statue, showing that no matter how she's seen, no matter how much she looks like a monster to other people, it doesn't make her one. The final reconciliation is good. I like how it ends. I do feel like Ballister and Nimona not getting a scene to really discuss what happened is weird, but on the other hand, the lack of dialogue in the moment does make their bond feel stronger. God, like there's things that I look at and I go, that's kind of weird, but then I also think and go, nah, it's great actually, it's fantastic. I think one of the more interesting criticisms I could give is that sometimes the animation can look great, but other times, especially in different lighting conditions, it can look unfinished. The characters at times do not look like they're in the same locations they're supposed to be. But given the way the movie actually came into existence, that might have been unavoidable. And thus, for the most part, I don't take too much issue with the movie. I think, despite my problems, it is a fun story with a decently fun main pair, and for some people, I'm sure, a really powerful message and allegorical meaning that would help propel it higher. It has a great ending. I really enjoyed it. I have seen plenty of people find comfort in this film for what it represents, and I think that's fantastic. I think it's a good movie, and if Blue Sky actually put it out, it probably would have been my favorite film they've ever done. So for Hilda and the Mountain King, I of course watched the first 2 seasons of Hilda that led up to it. It's a fantastic show and I love all of it. Did the movie live up? No, but it's still great. Hilda and the Mountain King is a perfect kids film, and I say that in the most complimentary way I can. While its plot is light, its characters sometimes questionable, and frankly its usage of the characters not particularly tight, it really sucks you into the world as I'd expect from Hilda. It has some fantastically delivered messages and morals too. The world isn't just made of good guys and bad guys. Good communication is always the best solution to a conflict, and of course the standard Hilda themes of love your mother because you've only got one, and a good mother deserves to be loved back. The titular Mountain King is such a great character. The reveal as to who the Mountain King is not a surprise, given the would-be red herring appears like once before the reveal happens, but he's very entertaining, very imposing, and his motivations make sense to me. He's oddly even a bit less vicious than I'd expect. Given his goal of reuniting his people with their mother whom humans have buried and left separate from her kind for years, he is surprisingly not terribly violent about it. He willingly sacrifices himself, and despite Hilda technically thwarting the specifics of his plan, his goals are ultimately successful. Of course, I have to admit that a lot of heavy lifting is coming from my existing fondness for the characters and the world, but at the same time, I think it would be unfair to watch this movie without the context. It is essentially a finale film that happens to have a sequel season to it. It works best in context because this is not a movie that was ever meant to be watched without context. So I can appreciate the more consistently dark tone, the focus equally on Johanna and Hilda. It doesn't make it about Hilda with Johanna just being there for moral elements, they're both equally important. Everyone else is enjoyable as usual. There's an expansion of troll culture, history, and lifestyle that's very lovely and nice to see. And of course, the animation is gorgeous. One of the most pretty films to look at on the list. I love the art style and animation of Hilda, and this movie helps show what it can do when it goes for a more serious storyline about impending war and the like. It's not necessarily the greatest individual story in Hilda, but it definitely has the most fittingly grand scope for a movie. Maybe there are some technically bigger things, like the various infinite voids of endless nothing, but they don't concern Trollberg and its history to the same degree. And I love that ending, as Hilda finally gets Olberg to stop being such a complete twat. It's nice to see him finally get a clue. Unfortunately, while the movie may be fantastic in a lot of ways, it also feels like it suffers from some of its character usage. Frida and David in particular don't feel like they matter. David gets to add to the motherhood themes to a degree, but otherwise they spend all their time trying to find out what happened to Hilda, and by the time they do, what happened to Hilda is over. They don't have much of a role, and while I understand it's probably because they are minor characters in the original graphic novels, they were able to give them meaningful roles in episodes adapting graphic novels that they're not in. At least the other characters directly work with Johanna to find Hilda, so like they at least get a role in aiding her get to her daughter. And then there's Triller. Triller kidnaps Hilda before the movie even begins, and doesn't really get confronted for that. I think she does enough to help that I can understand what they were going for. She does mean well, she just does something terrible, but the film doesn't confront it beyond her realizing it was shitty, and that's it. So it feels like there's some unintentional strangeness to the whole situation, and her bonding with Hilda happens way too quickly. Like, Hilda probably should have spent more time warming up to her, I think. But I can't hold these flaws too strongly against the film because, I mean, when Hilda reunites with her mother and they embrace after spending so much time apart, I felt that. There was something about this movie that just hit me. The ending with the mother of all trolls finally getting the chance to talk with her children and telling them how proud she is of them. Man, Hilda and the Mountain King genuinely is a flawed film. It has some sizable problems to it, but I also think in the most complimentary way possible, this is an ideal kids movie. It's an emotionally resonant, beautifully animated, fittingly grandiose film that works as a great finale to a fantastic show. If you ignore Season 3 exists, but you shouldn't because Season 3 is good and don't let the haters tell you otherwise.
Reality includes time.
Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a great show. Not my favourite Turtle series, especially because it spends so much of its first season focused on just comedy that I found myself not caring for these versions of the characters as more than just joke dispensing archetypes until later in the season. Especially Splinter, who I only came to even remotely like much later. The movie acts as a continuation and sequel to the show, following up primarily on the final bit of the show where Splinter decides Leo is the leader now, though not really, given it doesn't get talked about explicitly. Immediately, it's impossible not to notice the film is gorgeous. It might be the best animated thing on the ranking. Everything is gorgeous, lighting's beautiful, effects are great, the action is fucking insane and beyond fluidity. The character animation is on its own level. They are exceptionally funny with their expressions, yet also great at conveying emotion in serious moments. It helps that by this point, these are established turtles who do their own fun things with the characters. Mikey isn't too different from usual, but Donnie is played far drier than he usually is, and the two have more explicit intentions of neurodivergence, which is great. Leo is a very distinct, if not very Leonardo take on the character, bordering on being the same character as his voice actor's more famous role in movie Sonic. The movie expands on some of the themes and character dynamics of the show, with Raph's overprotective nature and Leo's irresponsibility in particular. But Donnie and Mikey do get more to do than usual in these films. They get more development. Meanwhile, Raph actually gets sidelined for most of the film, which I would be bothered by if this wasn't following on from a show that already gave him a lot of focus. I feel like Leo is a level of irresponsible beyond what I can believe for this version, at least at this point, like compared to how he was in the final arc of the show, but it works to give the film a strong emotional core of brothers coming together and resolving their problems. April is as fun as ever, and Splinter is good too. Most importantly, the newcomer in KC2 is also pretty likable. And that final act, as the Turtles make up in the end, Leo comes into his role as a leader and they save Raph, all building up to them finally figuring out a way to describe themselves in a very charming Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles name drop that pays off a bit from the whole show. And the fucking mental battle with Krang that somehow matches and at points even exceeds the final Shredder fight of Season 2 is fantastic. All with the boys coming together to support Mikey in an attempt to save Leo. God, it's such a good moment. It helps make the movie feel so much better rounded than it could have been. Add on some extra positives like how funny the film is, and I've begun to wonder where I even draw issues here. Well, one of the notable issues is that watching the show beforehand makes you wonder why the Turtles never call in backup from their allies, particularly Sheldon, Frankenfoot, and especially Baron Draxum, who became about as major a character at the end as could be without literally being a turtle himself. Mikey considers him a second father. It's insane that he doesn't even get a passing mention, given the dire nature of the situation. I also think that Krang, while effective as villains in terms of being imposing threats, don't have much going on as characters. At least the Shredder, for as one note as he was, supplemented his imposing and intense menace with having a very personal relationship with the Turtles and their ancestry. The Krangs don't even get names. I don't think this hurts the film too badly. The core is about the brothers coming together. The Krang are not the focus. But it doesn't mean those issues aren't there. The movie's still fantastic though. Robot Dreams is so close to being a perfect movie. It is a film with no dialogue, a gorgeous art style, and expressive fun animation that conveys so much with so little. As simple as dog buys robot and loses it at the beach and the robot imagines doing interesting stuff sounds, it really works, because the core elements of the film are so strong. Dog is a top tier fucking loser. He has no friends except those that end up leaving him for whatever reason. He flashes kids, he strips naked on a public beach, he becomes incarcerated for trespassing and attempted breaking and entering. But he's very endearing because nothing seems to go right for him. We don't know much about his life, but we get enough to see that he's alone and has no friends. You do want to see him happy. But Robot is the core character of the film. This is, after all, Robot Dreams and not Dog Molds. Though I guess technically it's Mon Ami Robot, but that's still robot focused. Robot is so lovable. He has such a joyful life. He looks so happy and so joyful just living. It's impossible not to love him. He only ever got to really love one day, and so his fantasies all end up involving him just going back to his one friend after he gets left behind. Despite spending most of the movie in one spot, they get plenty out of him just by these little imaginary moments, or when he helps those birds. Touch it alright. The friendship between the two, despite how little time they spend together, is amazing. You can feel Dog's loss from just how he fails to take care of himself, his attempts to get Robot back, and eventually his choice to try and live his life normally, only to be constantly reminded of Robot, especially as everyone refuses to get to know him or end up leaving. Every single scene in this movie is so charming and fun, but it's hard to find words to use to talk about it, because It itself doesn't use words. I can point and go, look at how fun it is. There's a lot of fun touches, there's a lot of cute moments. There's also these rabbits and this crocodile who deserve death for their crimes. I like the use of September in this film because it is the one song that represents the single day Robot got to live. It's the tune that connects him to Dog no matter how far away they are. They will always be friends no matter where they are, just around the bend or very, very far. Sorry, that was a reference most of you won't get. This little tune is their bond. As short as it is, being a song, it stands for their connection. Like the song, the friendship moves them, it sticks with them, it constantly plays in their head. It is what sits in their minds when the rest is silent. The movie does a great job of representing those feelings of separation that come from being apart from your friends for a long time, and that is great! It is a powerful, incredibly strong movie that I do not like the ending to. Let me explain. I love what the ending represents. Dwelling on what you lose and letting it hold you back is never the way to living fully. Dog moves on with a new friend who helps fulfill his life, whether you want to read that romantically or not, which I believe is meant to be up to you. Robot bonds with someone who puts him back together and finds a new person to be there to introduce him to the wonders of life. They may be in each other's hearts forever, but they end up on different, separate paths. However, the way this is done doesn't land for me. First of all, the fantasy sequence of their reunion does hit. The movie varies greatly in how it handles the fantasy sequences. The first one really lands, but afterwards it stops landing. So, because the movie knows you're already expecting the dream sequences, it lets them get more fantastical. There comes a point where you're not even supposed to imagine it's real. Only for the final fantasy to just be leading you in to forget that the grounded fantasies exist and make you believe this is really happening. Boom! Gut punch. That never happened. Robot then plays their song and they dance in sync without seeing one another, and in that moment, Dog suddenly sees him, and Robot hides. Robot then leaves and goes to be with his new friend Rascal. However, in this moment, Robot takes away Dog's ability to choose this mutual path. This isn't two friends who choose to go separate paths. Robot chooses this for Dog, under the assumption that Dog is okay with it. We never get to see Dog's thoughts. They both want to see each other again. There's no reason to believe that seeing each other would somehow force the other Robot or Rascal out of their lives now. They live in the same city, still seemingly within walking or at most public transit distance from one another. This would make me feel so much better and less dirty if they made this choice together. If Robot didn't hide but instead let Dog see him, and they mutually chose this path. This isn't two people forced apart or who choose to go far apart for their own reasons. This is one person deciding that a friend whom they want to see and wants to see them doesn't get to. Dog is still under the assumption that Robot is dead. Why would you take the chance for him to know better away from him? You are forcing him to live with the knowledge that you are dead without letting him know better. I did not jive with that, especially because Dog has been seeing Robot in places where Robot isn't before. He probably assumed that that was just another hallucination. I think Dog deserved to choose for himself what he wanted to do. This is no longer the intended message of how sometimes people just drift apart but can still live full lives even if they don't see each other. This is someone choosing to move on without letting the other party know the details or make their own choice. Does this ruin the movie? No. 99% of this movie is a bona fide masterpiece of wordless storytelling that conveys loneliness, friendship, separation, mourning, delirium, recovery, and the power just a single day of happiness can have in making someone's life better. The anti-killing joke, you could say. I have known people that I only really got to know for a short amount of time before they ended up out of my life for whatever reason, but the impact they had and the time we had together stayed a part of me. I'll probably never get to see them again, but I will always remember them. This movie captures that, and for that I would highly recommend Robot Dreams, especially on the chance the ending does click with you, because if it does, I think this is one of those movies that closes in on perfection.
Please get yourself together, guys!
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem manages not only to be a fantastic Ninja Turtles film, but just a generally really fucking good movie. Off the top, this is a gorgeous film. Each frame looks like it was hand painted. Everything moves with a gorgeous manner of fluidity and freedom. It looks amazing at every turn. And oddly enough, I just feel like this painted look kind of has the vibe of New York City from what I know of the place. Accompanying these visuals are fantastic vocal performances. They aren't the most standout turtle voices to me, but they all do a solid job of bringing out these younger lads to life. I think Ice Cube does a fantastic job as our villain Superfly, way better than I've ever heard for him, and Seth Rogen choosing to voice Bebop I think is hysterical. This movie is generally quite funny. Rarely from the turtles, I admit. Like, they're Gen Alpha teens in this one, which leaves me conflicted because they're very accurately portrayed in how it makes them, you know, Gen Alpha, and they say random bullshit that only has meaning to them. But, you know, I also hate Gen Alpha kids, so it's not really the most fun, even if I can't say it's a problem. None of them get their own individual arcs in this movie, which I think is fine. It's a solid overall arc they have together though, and the themes and development of the movie and characters are more on a group level. It's more about the brothers as a whole wanting to be accepted and eventually finding a place, not by pretending to be something they aren't, but by just pretending to be themselves. There's an uncomfortable reality to how Splinter gets immediately assaulted for being different, and later Superfly's actions are used to vilify the entire mutant group. And that's how things can be, sadly. One bad apple can make the whole bunch look spoiled. Now, the individual turtles still get their own standout traits and smaller arcs. Leo comes to his own as a leader, and he encourages his brothers to be who they are. Donnie as a nerd, Mikey as a gooster, and Raph as a maniac. Side note, not uber big on nerd Donnie as a concept. I think it makes him more stereotypical and less unique than just, he's the super smart one, but he's not your stereotypical nerd. It's okay here, I guess, though. It's not a major focus. The movie does kind of dodge the issue of Leo and Raph being the main characters. Like, here, there are no main characters. I kind of like that. Along with them, though, the other mutants are all really fun. I particularly love that Mondo Gecko got to return, and the amusing take on Leatherhead melding an 87 style design with a more normal version of the character is cool. I think where the movie really excels beyond its themes and messages is the action. There are some incredibly fun action scenes. From just really fun sequences to the incredibly intense and impeccably well-scaled kaiju fight to the road battle, it's all so damn good and has a palpable kinetic energy that puts it right alongside other movies that show very clear Spider-Verse inspirations. And I say that's enough for this to just be such a great movie. It doesn't necessarily break new ground, but it really handles well what it's going for. Its characters are all likable, and I haven't even mentioned the fun version of April that feels like a nice middle ground between Rise April and a more contemporary April. I haven't even really talked about how great Superfly is as an understandable yet malicious horrific foil to Splinter. It's not used much, it's really just there so that Splinter can realize his mistakes as a father and come around to be more supportive later, but it's there and it's great. The film could have gone into that more. In fact, the exclusion of Hamato Yoshi is really weird. It would play super well as a direct mirror to Superfly's relationship with Baxter Stockman, or going with the alternate Splinter is Yoshi version, which would offer a direct conflict between them. There's something great there that's not tapped into. I'd argue the same for the Turtles with Superfly. They only really get two scenes together and definitely could have been more fleshed out. There's a lot of interesting stuff that could have been done with the character. It doesn't bring the movie down much though. What is here is a wonderfully crafted, extremely fun time with lots of enjoyable characters. It's impeccably put together with great action scenes and a definite, if unfortunately accurate understanding of the teens in its modern day and how they talk. I really liked it. Superfly is a great new villain. I hope he continues to show up in future Turtle stuff, especially in anything that wants Baxter Stockman but doesn't want to go the 87 route.
Jerk! Robber! On one harbor!
When the Wind Blows genuinely got to me. It's a film split into two halves, a delightful and gentle little film about the lives of two normal humanoids of the species British as they go about their daily business, and the horrific post-atom bomb state of their final days. The film had a lot to say, I felt, about blindly following the hopeless guidelines of the authority, putting too much faith in those with power and not being willing to do anything on your own, the horrors of nuclear war and the dangers of taking the horrors of war for granted. But at its core, what really made this a hard watch, and in a good way, was the whole first chunk, surprisingly. It showed us this delightful couple. Jim and Hilda are just a lovely little couple of old people. Hilda is well-meaning yet blunt, and Jim is prone to flights of fantasy and whimsy. We see Jim undergo the nuclear fallout hyperfixation autism as he follows guidelines that end up contradicting one another, and then, boom. The cake is going to burn. Everything is fucked. The second half of the movie is just watching two old people die. It's hard not to feel something here. It's so utterly bleak in a way that feels very intentional, but not something you can look away from. Because you want to see them succeed, you want them to get help, but there's this feeling of utter blankness. There is thankfully also a good bit of black comedy and bits like just funny moments that I think make it easier. The two of them make fun comments and continue to have their quirks. They have such a gentle, whimsically oblivious outlook that the movie doesn't feel as bleak as it is, despite the fact that, frankly, nobody but these two exist in the world of the movie. And yet, when the end comes and the movie just ends, with them cuddling up together looking utterly deathly as the fallout finally takes them and as they die, it's a crushing ending. I watched this movie with Biffy, and we were joking here and there throughout the film, but in the last 15 minutes, there were no words. It was harrowing. I cannot express how much this movie moves the viewer. It's helped a lot by how it's portrayed. The soundtrack and soundscape of the movie are perfect. There is what I can only describe as a sharp atmosphere, if such description fits. Everything feels painful. The sound design is like a stab in the gut at all times, except for when suddenly it's just gone. It's completely silent, letting the emptiness of this post-Fallout world sink in. We may be looking at the last two people on Earth. The movie shows us that the one thing worse than dying to the bomb is surviving it. And yet, throughout, there is plenty of commentary. There's the incompetence of governments at war that give useless advice, making these two destroy their home and make a useless shelter that wouldn't have helped them at all if they weren't lucky enough to be that far away from the epicenter of the blast. The two stay where they are and make excuses for all that goes wrong because, well, help is coming. They never really try to survive on their own or do anything but let themselves die over time. Throughout, the two take their safety for granted. They constantly go, oh, we survived X and we made it through Y, without realizing the true severity of the new threat being far beyond what they've ever met. And if there's anything else that could truly bring this movie together, it's the delightful animation. Our two main characters are animated, yet they're in a weird, almost photorealistic world where things move and jitter in an unnatural way. The camera work and the spins and all that just make help this movie really stand out visually. The live action elements really make it feel more visceral when shit goes wrong. Plus, as these characters are essentially fictionalized adaptations of the author's parents, it comes across as two made-up people in a harsh reality, a what-if story purely off visuals, while the rest of the animation is in these whimsically abstract moments of imagination, all quite lovely and exciting, plus horrific when the explosion happens. That said, this is not a movie that can be watched on a whim. There's plenty of funny lines, especially with how naively fun the couple can be, but most of it is coldly dark and bleak. It's a movie I'm glad I watched, but I can't say I'm dying to see again. It also has our boy here calling his wife a stupid bitch, which is hilarious, frankly.
Chapter 1, World War II.
Few films I have seen in the last few years have broken me the way Ethel and Ernest has. The movie is so simple. It's nothing more than the life and times of the author's parents from the day they met to the day they weren't around anymore. And yet, as simple as it is, it's beautiful. It's a reminder that as fun as the stories we watch are, any random individual story can be just as enthralling and amazing. These people weren't heroes. They weren't any kind of amazing, crazy, world-changing individuals. They were a simple husband and wife. Two normal people with normal lives who raised a normal child, as the world changed around them as they grew older and raised their son. The film feels more authentic than I think almost any other based on a true story film I've ever seen has. It feels more authentic than a lot of documentaries. It doesn't feel like it tries to shy away from what made them flawed or doll up their lives to try and make them seem more interesting. When World War II happens, there's no need for one of them to go out into battle, or to scream in the streets as the wreckage of their hometown lies in ruins around them. You just hear from the news how the war slowly encroaches closer, just like the layman did. You see as they make their preparations, as they get ready in case something happens, and the few times something exciting happens, not only is it far more terrifying than exciting due to the grounded nature of the film, but it's all very believable. I can believe that a bomb went off around them at points, or that a plane nearly crashed into them. And either time the focus is not on the spectacle of what's happening, but the danger of what it puts our characters through. As the movie goes on, you don't even notice how attached you get. I didn't realize how much I cared about this home that I'd see them put together and live in for the last 30 minutes until I saw it destroyed. I didn't even realize how much I cared for Ethel and Ernest, despite all their issues, until they were gone. The two are flawed, of course they are. They have a scene where they comment about other races and how they should be more like them and less barbaric. There's a moment where they struggle to understand what homosexuality is. There's moments throughout where Ethel goes on and on about not caring for progress and things change because it's not like their younger days. And it never feels like that's, oh, look, they're terrible people. It feels like they're just people from those times. It is an accurate retelling of just people of the day. That last thing still happens today, of course, but these people aren't racist or homophobes as we know them. They just don't know better. That's what society was like. People didn't educate people on these things. And even in that moment, commenting on races, you can see Ernest taking a moment to sink in what has been said, as he considers maybe this attitude is the very same one that's leading the big guy in the war to do what he's doing. There is something so genuinely harrowing just seeing the development of the war in the background. There's something relatably terrifying about the development of war in the movie overall. Ethel and Ernest are nothing in the face of the war. They were just two people who survived it. They were barely in danger for a lot of it. And I think for a lot of us right now, that can hit home. That feeling of knowing you can't do anything as countless people die overseas or in another state or country around you. And that perpetual fear of that war right now is separate, but what happens when it comes to you? The ending did me in. Throughout the film, Ernest is just a chipper bloke. The moments he's not really hit home. When he breaks down from the war and he tries to be there for his mate who lost his son in it, those are powerful moments. But nothing breaks him the same as when Ethel starts to fade. My own grandmother's passing was so similar to what happens in this film. The movie captures perfectly how someone suffering from dementia acts and talks. The slow descent, the loss of self, the loss of memories that made them who they were in life. Ethel forgets who Ernest even is by the end, something my own grandmother did. By the end of her life, I was the only person she could remember. I couldn't finish this movie at first. I had to stop and just walk away for the last 10 minutes because it crushed me. In that moment, I could feel the reality behind the film. Everything else already felt believable, felt like they weren't shying away from who these people were, what their lives were like. But it was in this moment where I really felt like I got the author. I knew I could relate, finally, with the direct experience of what the author went through. And when I came back to the movie, it didn't get any nicer. Ernest soon left as well, and the movie ends with their son cleaning up their home. He goes to a little peach tree that they planted earlier in the movie, and the film ends on that note. Ethel and Ernest, I don't know if I'll ever watch again, but I'm so glad I watched it at all. It's a beautiful, mesmerizing film, and I haven't even mentioned the gorgeous animation that feels straight out the art of a comic. At least, from what I've seen of the original. It's just beautiful. Everybody is expressive, alive, and gorgeous. The voice acting carries every character. I can't express how lovely this movie really is. Slice of life is so hard to describe sometimes, and that goes for this too. I can't critique the story or the narrative. It's reality. It's supposed to be what really happened. I can only congratulate that it doesn't feel like a coherent, single narrative. It feels like a full-blown life. You can so easily, write this based on nothing and make it feel like an incoherent mess, or make it feel like too much of a single story being told. But no, each snippet feels meaningful. Not because the snippets progress the narrative, not because the snippets push the themes, not because the snippets take us to the next act, but because those snippets of life meant something to the people. Even the smallest little moments that never get brought up again meant something to the people experiencing them. Think of your own memories. How many things can you remember that stick with you that you're pretty sure nobody else, even those in that moment, ever really thought about? That's kind of the feeling this movie captures. Ethel and Ernest is a truly, undeniably, genuinely special movie. One that makes me so happy to have made this video. And you know what? This was a fun video to make. There were definitely its fair share of stinkers in the end. There were a lot of movies that I just didn't think were that special, and a lot of just kind of mediocre ones. But there is a very steep ramp up in quality at a certain point. There is a point where they just become amazing. And man, I'm so happy I did this. It was a very fun one to do. Now, the question comes in, will I do the comic strip ones? Again, the difficulty is that doing them in live action, there are 200 live action comic strip movies, and who cares about all the movies about Blondie? There's just so much to cover. I can cut it down, and I probably could do the animated ones. Let me know. I have also looked into doing every non-English language, non-Japanese comic animated adaptation, but there are so many that are just not available to watch, or if they are, aren't translated, no dub or sub, and that makes that really hard. But yeah, tell me what you thought. I hope you enjoyed this video. My voice hurts, I gotta take a break. Alrighty everyone, that was the animated comic book ranking. I had a lot of fun with this one. It was definitely more consistent in terms of quality compared to the live action ones, but I hope you all enjoyed it. I know there are a lot of people who really wanted to see me rank Asterix, but as I even said, I think I said at the end of this video already, yeah, that could still happen. I could dedicate a whole video to Asterix and Smurfs and then not have to worry about that whole segment. And Tintin as well. Tintin definitely might deserve it. But for now, we're just gonna leave it on this. This is a pretty meaty ranking, and I've got another meaty ranking. The Scooby-Doo ranking should already be available on my Patreon for anyone who wants to check it out. And I hope you enjoy. Speaking of my Patreon, hey, check out all these people. Thank you for supporting me. You're all legends, as I always say, as always is the case generally. Thank you for supporting me and helping me keep this channel, going in spite of all the shit that's happening everywhere, including, my life. Everyone's got tough shit though, so I'm not going to burden you with it. But yeah, if you want to support me, you can do that on Patreon, and you'll get access to my Discord where you can chat to me if you want, and also make me say stupid stuff. And we're going to start with Biffweed over here, who says, read another of our pinned messages at random. So I'm now going to go to a random number generator.
Also kill yourself. Never speak again. I'm here too.
We have Reggie Rock. Hi, Reggie Rock. Recite He-Man's speech about how he got his powers from the cartoon. Okay. I am Adam, Prince of Eternia, defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. This is Cringer, my fearless friend. Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said, "By the power of Grayskull, I have the power!" Cringer became the mighty Battle Cat, and I became He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe. Only 3 others share this secret. Our friends the Sorceress, Man-at-Arms, and Orko. Together we defend Castle Grayskull from the evil forces of Skeletor.
I missed my balls!
You watch all these movies with the blindfold on, how do you think the ranking would go? I'd
rank all of them, nothing.
Look, let me be clear. I know this is a hot topic and a bit of a stretch, but here's the thing.
Where are we headed, Jugman, my man? Hey, you liberals. Why is it called a smartphone? Which just makes us dumber.
Live action anime movie ranking. Look, okay, here's the thing. Live action Hollywood anime movies ranking. Very possible. Every single live action adaptation of a manga or anime would be over 300 to 400 movies. It would be longer than the Asylum ranking, and there would be like 12 entries for multiple sets of 12 entries for manga that nobody could give a fucking toss about. And half of which I won't even be able to watch because they either they're mostly not dubbed and almost certainly also not subbed. So it would just be like, oh, here's my thoughts on this gibberish movie that I can't understand about romance that sure can look pretty, but I don't speak the language, so it is gobbledygook to me. I don't know what it means. Again, live action Western adaptations, very possible, and yes, Dragon Ball Evolution would be there. It almost certainly, it would not be last place. It has no chance of being last place, but it would be down near the bottom, obviously. So it's a thing, it could happen, but you got a better shot at me doing the ranking of every comic strip movie or every Asylum film.
Jokes up enjoys when they see the punchline provide comedic payoff to the setup.
Yeah, I like how you just ruined the punchline, but it kind of fits the fucking thing. Say something stupid and funny that'll make me laugh. It is posted by tomorrow, but listening to the video working at the same... How am I supposed to say something that makes you laugh? I can't say anything that makes you laugh.
Lenades.
What the fuck does that mean? What's Lenades nuts? That means nothing. That means nothing. You're over 30 and you still want a Happy Meal with a toy?
Correct, madam!
That is not the voice I thought I'd be hearing. We are Venom, we don't sound like that. Shut up, Eddie. You are stupid. Alright, that's that. Take care, everyone. Have a good one. And I hope you enjoyed. Go jump on that Scooby-Doo ranking. I think it might be even longer than this one.
jump in it or suck Lenardi's nut?